Always, always ABCs. And then according to what your protocol is, you remove the helmet first. I think, Jody, right? Your protocol is remove the helmet first and then put on the C-collar. There are different ways that it can be done. The important thing is that you remember in the application of your C-collar, whatever kind of C-collar you use, but you always follow your protocol. It's always ABCs and follow your protocol. And if you have any specific questions about protocol, I can't answer those, but Jody is available, and I think she's the go-to person here for that. Any general questions about the C-collar?
And its application.
And its application with the SAM splint. Okay, perfect. We're going to move on to a fractured forearm. I think it's another common injury that you can see in the wilderness, and there are different splints that you can make. Thank you. In stabilizing and immobilizing that fractured forearm. Somebody lands on an outstretched arm and the two bones in the forearm fracture, anywhere from the wrist on up towards the elbow. So I'm going to show you how to put on what's called a sugar Tong splint. A sugar Tong splint is a splint that ends up lying on both sides of the arm, underneath the arm and on top of the arm. There are splints you'll see noted in the book with a different name, and they just simply go underneath the arm. I think, given the scenario that you guys are in, out there on the mountain, the person, your patient, is probably going to be sitting or lying in a toboggan or on a snowmobile. You might be needing to take them down a bumpy run. I think to completely encompass that arm with a splint will just give them added protection versus just putting a splint on underneath the arm, just on half of it. So I'm going to show you how to do it. Again, it's about making bends in it to stabilize that forearm. Do you just want to come up and hold this for me? Do you mind doing that? Okay, I'm going to show you on myself just because it might be easier that way. And then we'll go around and break up into the small groups before. Because my arm is short and the splint is 36 inches long, I don't need to worry about extra distance or length in the splint. So I can just make a bend for my curving around my fingers, allowing my fingers to curve. So my patient has a fractured right arm. I make a curve right here, put it in a slightly flexed position, just ever so slightly. I make a bend for the thumb rest. On the opposite side, I curve the edge up. Because it's this bend right here that is going to prevent that flexion of the wrist. And then I make a cradle, make like a U shape out of the whole splint. This is where the forearm is going to rest. Now, what you can do is you're not going to want to bend this and mold it to the fractured arm because your patient will scream and cry and kick you in places you don't want to be kicked. So what you're going to do is you're going to mold it and shape it to the opposite arm, take it off, put the thumb bend, and this extra little bend right here, that ridge is so critical in the fractured arm site. The other end you bend it slightly because it's going to go on top of the forearm. So again, just a nice slight cradle. You put their injured arm on it, you flip that other end over, and you want it to end just by the knuckles. On the hand. It doesn't need to come up and extend. You do not pull it tight along the elbow. Leave that gap there. This comes up to the knuckles. Bend it down, just forming that crease which you've done on an uninjured arm. The elbow needs to tuck way down to the bottom here. You don't want that SAM splint sliding off the elbow. You want the elbow tucked way down into that SAM splint. You can put a piece of tape around it right here. And then, guess what you do with this? The same thing that you did on the C-collar. You squish it, make a wing out of it, and bend it to snug it up. And here you have protection both on the top and the bottom of that forearm.
Cheryl, does it matter if that end goes forward or backward?
That's a great question, Chris. And no, it doesn't. It's whatever situation allows the most comfort for the patient. You might find that you can get it tighter if you push it back. Some people prefer pushing it forward, but it can go either way. Same with the C-collar, the side wings, forward or backward.
And what happens, I mean, it's warm in here. What happens on the mountain when it's 2 degrees?
The aluminum stays flexible even when it's cold, and so does the foam. So on the mountain, you can manipulate it. The nice thing about this, too, is the foam will help keep the chill off of your fingers, and if you're taking your gloves off for some reason, you're not going to be quite as at risk of getting your fingers cold because you're not actually touching the metal. But this sand splint, even in the cold, remains very, very malleable and easy to work with.
Here's another question from Mount Hood. What happens when it's wet?
Does the foam fall apart? No. The foam does not fall apart when it's wet, but when it's wet, you might have trouble getting the tape to stick to it. And so you can go ahead and tape it circumferentially around there so that the tape is sticking to itself. Just remember your transport time down the mountain is relatively short, so you don't need to worry about so much swelling that you'll be cutting off or compromising the circulation of the fingers. So do a circumferential tape wrap, or you could always tie a string around it or a piece of cordage that you have, or a cravat. A cravat would definitely work. If the person is going to be sitting up, then what you want to do is try and keep the arm, don't just let it dangle, but you don't want it to be supported right here. So get some safety pins or another cravat or something and get that arm so it's in a vertical or a horizontal position to the ground. Now, how about a question? Do you want to splint this over a jacket sleeve or under a jacket sleeve? I think it depends. If you have bones sticking out and there's a lot of blood and stuff, the jacket's probably going to be ripped. Go ahead and cut the jacket, get access to it, and do what you can with it. And if it seems pretty minor and you can splint it over a jacket, splint it over a jacket. If it's, jackets are pretty expensive nowadays, so you just kind of have to make that decision based on the scene that you have. Either is going to be okay. If you can get down to the skin, get down to the skin without too much trouble.
Our protocol, we're going down the skin, guys.
Oh, your protocol is you're going down to the skin. So, yeah, cut the jacket or take the uninjured arm out of the jacket and then slide it off the injured arm and then splint. Make sure you then put the uninjured arm back in the coat to keep your patient warm.
Question in the back?
I had a question about the seat collar again. We're talking about tape. Have you had experience with taping like all the way around the thing to make it stick, or what's your best experience with making it stick?
My favorite tape is duct tape, and duct tape makes it stick. If you have just horizontal before you put the wings in, just tape it down and then put the wings in it. And I don't ever tape it circumferentially, but if for some reason you feel that you need to do that, go ahead. You're going to be constantly assessing their airway anyway.
No. Okay, just real brief, we're not going to go into a lot on our protocols up on the mountain, guys, but the bottom line, we're talking about a seat collar here. And remember, whenever we put tape, we're not going around circumferential. That's our airway we're dealing with. So we'll talk at the end here more about different protocols with our areas. But right now, what we're trying to do is to get you exposure of how to use splints and stuff like that, okay?
Okay, so break up into your groups and make sure you holler at one of us as we're floating around.